A 9-month pregnant woman stood in a hospital corridor, one hand resting beneath the weight of her unborn child. The other was caught in her husband's grip. The crack was sharp, not loud but final. No one moved at first. Nurses froze. A stroller rolled slightly unattended. He released her immediately, voice already shifting, already explaining. An accident. She slipped. He was helping. She didn't argue. She didn't look at him. What no one in that hallway understood, what he hadn't even considered, was that somewhere far beyond those walls, a man who did not forgive easily was about to hear exactly how her arm had been broken. If you believe silence doesn't mean weakness, stay with this story until the end. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing, not for me, but for the truth that often goes unheard. The Carter house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Northern Virginia, where the lawns were trimmed on schedule and the mailboxes stood upright in quiet agreement. From the outside, nothing suggested strain. The siding was clean, the windows unbroken, the porch light always working. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved without stopping, and no one asked questions unless something was already too obvious to ignore. Inside, the air carried a different kind of order. Amelia Carter moved slowly through the kitchen that morning, one hand resting against the curve of her abdomen, the other steadying herself on the counter as she reached for a glass. At 9 months pregnant, every motion required calculation. She had learned to move with care, not just for the child, but for the atmosphere. Lucas Carter stood near the island, scrolling through his phone, already dressed for work, though he had nowhere urgent to be. His shirt was pressed, his posture easy, his expression neutral, in the way that had once been reassuring. He looked up briefly as Amelia poured water. "You're using that glass?" he asked. Amelia paused, her hand still around it. "Yes." He frowned slightly. "I told you those are for guests." There was no raised voice, no sharp edge, just a correction placed neatly between them. Amelia set the glass down without drinking. "I'll use another." Lucas gave a small nod as if something had been restored to its proper place. He returned his attention to his phone. The moment passed as most of them did, quietly, without confrontation, leaving no visible mark. But Amelia noticed it. She always noticed. On the refrigerator, a calendar hung with carefully written appointments. Doctor visits. Checkups. Estimated due date circled twice. Beneath the neat handwriting there were smaller marks, tiny dots beside certain days, lines drawn so faint they could be mistaken for smudges. They meant something, though no one else would have known what. Amelia crossed the room and added another small notation under the current date. Her movements were unhurried, almost absent-minded, but deliberate in a way Lucas had never fully understood. He believed he understood her completely. That belief had shaped everything. Later that morning, sunlight filtered through the front windows as a neighbor paused outside with her dog. Lucas stepped onto the porch, smiling easily, exchanging brief pleasantries about the weather and the upcoming weekend. His tone was warm, relaxed, practiced. The neighbor glanced past him into the house where Amelia stood, partially visible, one hand braced against the wall. "You must be getting close now," the neighbor said. "Any day," Lucas replied. "She's been a little overwhelmed, but we're managing." Amelia did not correct him. She inclined her head slightly when the neighbor waved. From the outside, the exchange was ordinary. It would be remembered as ordinary. Lucas closed the door and locked it out of habit. The click was soft but distinct. "You don't need to stand there like that," he said, not looking at her. "It gives people the wrong impression." Amelia moved away from the wall. "What impression?" she asked. "That you can't handle things," Lucas said. "You're stronger than that. Or at least you should be." There was no anger in his voice, only expectation. Amelia nodded once, though she did not agree. Agreement was not always necessary. Sometimes acknowledgement was enough to move the moment forward. In the living room, a stack of unopened mail rested on the coffee table. Lucas sorted through it quickly, separating bills from advertisements, setting aside anything that required a signature. "I need you to look at this later," he said, holding up an envelope without turning toward her. "It's just a routine update for the joint account." Amelia's eyes lingered on the envelope for a fraction longer than necessary. "Okay," she said. Lucas placed it neatly on the table, aligning it with the edge. "It's nothing complicated. I've already gone over it." He often said that. Amelia had learned that nothing complicated usually meant something had already been decided. The house remained quiet for the rest of the morning. Not peaceful, just undisturbed. There was a difference. When Lucas finally left, the silence shifted. It was no longer structured around him. It expanded slightly, allowing space for things that could not exist while he was present. Amelia waited until she heard the car disappear down the street before she moved back to the coffee table. She picked up the envelope carefully, opening it along the edge without tearing the contents. Inside were printed statements, numbers arranged in clean columns, transactions listed without context, transfers, withdrawals, accounts she recognized and others she did not. Her gaze moved slowly across the page. She did not react immediately. Instead, she carried the papers to the dining table and sat down, adjusting herself with visible effort. The chair creaked softly beneath her weight. Outside, a car passed, tires brushing against pavement. Amelia reached for her phone, unlocking it with steady hands. She opened her email and began typing her fingers, pausing occasionally as she considered each word. The message was not addressed to anyone. Subject: March 12. Financial review. She listed the transactions in order, noting the amounts, the times, the account numbers. No conclusions, no accusations, just record. When she finished, she did not send it. She saved it instead, placing it among other drafts, each one dated, each one precise. This was how she kept track. Not to confront, not yet. To remember. Across the country in a different time zone, Ethan Brooks glanced at his phone between meetings. A message from Amelia sat unread in his inbox, not urgent, not marked for attention. Just a simple update sent days earlier, brief and unremarkable on the surface. He would read it later. For now, it remained unopened, its significance deferred by distance and timing. Back in the Carter house, Amelia folded the bank statements and returned them to the envelope. She placed it exactly where Lucas had left it, aligning the edges carefully. Nothing in the room suggested anything had changed. That was part of what allowed it to continue. By the afternoon, the light shifted again, casting longer shadows across the floor. Amelia moved through the house with the same measured pace, adjusting small things, preparing for a future that was approaching whether she was ready or not. The crib in the nursery stood assembled, untouched, a soft blanket folded at the corner, clothes arranged by size. Everything appeared ready. Only the truth remained unspoken. And outside, the neighborhood continued as it always had, orderly, predictable, unaware. Lucas would return in a few hours. He would expect things to be where he left them. He would not ask what Amelia had seen, and Amelia would not tell him. Not yet. The house held its silence the way glass holds light, without distortion, without resistance, and without revealing what moved beneath the surface. Amelia Carter had learned to exist within that kind of silence, without disturbing it. She did not challenge it. She did not try to break it. She worked around it, through it, inside it, quietly building something that could not be seen from the outside. On the surface, nothing had changed since the morning. Lucas returned home at 6:12 p.m., as he usually did. The garage door opened with its familiar mechanical hum, followed by the sound of the car settling into place. The front door unlocked seconds later. "I'm home," he called out. Amelia was in the kitchen cutting fruit into small, even pieces. She had already heard the car, already adjusted her posture, already placed the knife at a safe angle on the cutting board. These were not conscious decisions anymore. They were patterns refined over time. "Hi," she answered. Lucas stepped inside, placing his keys in the bowl near the door. He glanced briefly at the counter, at the arrangement of food, at the order of things. His eyes moved quickly, but they missed very little. "You opened the mail?" he asked. Amelia did not look up immediately. She finished the slice she was holding, set it aside, then turned slightly. "Yes." And it looked standard. Lucas nodded once, as though confirming something he already believed. "Good." He walked past her, loosening his tie, moving through the house with the confidence of someone who expected the environment to remain stable in his absence. He paused near the living room, noticing the envelope placed back exactly where he had left it. That mattered to him. Details like that always mattered. Amelia watched him from the kitchen doorway, her expression unchanged. She did not ask about his day. Lucas preferred not to be asked unless he chose to speak. Dinner passed without incident. The conversation, if it could be called that, remained practical. "We have the appointment on Thursday," Lucas said, cutting his food with measured precision. "Yes. Don't be late this time." "I wasn't late." "You were close enough," he replied without looking at her. Amelia did not respond. She adjusted her napkin slightly, her movements controlled, contained. Lucas took another bite, then added, "It reflects on both of us." The statement was simple. It did not need elaboration. After dinner, Amelia cleared the table while Lucas moved to the living room. The television turned on low-volume background noise rather than entertainment. A news anchor spoke about something distant, something unrelated. In the kitchen, water ran steadily over dishes. Amelia washed them one by one, placing each in the drying rack with quiet precision. The rhythm was consistent, predictable. When she finished, she dried her hands and walked down the hallway to the bedroom. The door closed softly behind her. Inside the room was neat. The bed made. Curtains partially drawn. On the nightstand, her phone rested beside a small notebook, plain, unremarkable, easily overlooked. Amelia sat down, slowly adjusting herself with care. Her hand rested briefly on her abdomen, feeling the subtle movement beneath. The baby shifted, a quiet reminder of time moving forward. She reached for the notebook. Inside, the pages were filled with small, careful handwriting. Dates, times, short descriptions. Nothing emotional, nothing exaggerated. March 3, 8:17 p.m. Argument about spending, voice raised. Door closed forcefully. March 7, 6:42 a.m. Insisted on reviewing account. Transferred funds during conversation. March 1:09:05 p.m. Corrected statement in front of neighbor. Tone controlled. Each entry was brief, precise, enough to anchor memory to fact. Amelia turned to a new page. March 1:26:14 p.m. Confirmed envelope contents. Multiple transfers not previously discussed. She paused, pen hovering slightly above the paper. Then she added, "No explanation offered." The pen moved steadily. No hesitation. No visible emotion. She closed the notebook and returned it to its place. Next, she picked up her phone. The unsent email from earlier remained open. She reviewed it again, scanning the details, checking the accuracy of each number. Nothing had been altered. Satisfied, she saved it once more. Not yet. Timing mattered. In the living room, Lucas shifted on the couch, his attention divided between the television and his phone. A message appeared on his screen, brief, coded in a way that suggested familiarity. He read it, then typed a response quickly. Across town, in a quiet office building, another account received a notification. Funds had been moved again. Small amounts spaced out, structured to avoid attention. Lucas leaned back, exhaling slowly. Everything was under control. That was what he believed. Down the hall, Amelia turned off the bedroom light and lay back, carefully adjusting the pillows behind her. The darkness did not unsettle her. It simplified things. In the absence of light, there was less to manage. Her breathing slowed, steady, measured. She did not sleep immediately. Instead, she listened to the distant murmur of the television, to the faint sounds of movement in the house, to the quiet rhythm of her own body. She cataloged them without effort. This too was part of the record, not written but remembered. Hours later, when the house finally settled into stillness, Amelia opened her eyes again. The clock read 2:17 a.m. She reached for her phone, the screen lighting softly in the dark. Another email draft opened, this one older, less structured, written weeks before. Subject: just in case. The body contained fragments. Observations. Incomplete thoughts. It had been the beginning of something she hadn't yet defined. Now she understood its purpose more clearly. Amelia began to edit. She reorganized the information, removed anything unnecessary, added dates where they had been missing, cross-referenced events with her notebook. The process was slow, deliberate. She was not building an argument. She was building a record that could not be dismissed. In another state, several hundred miles away, Ethan Brooks finally opened the message Amelia had sent days earlier. He read it once. Then again. There was nothing alarming in the wording, nothing that would draw immediate concern from anyone else. But Ethan did not read for surface meaning. He read for pattern. He noted the timing, the phrasing, the absence of detail where detail would normally exist. He did not call immediately. Instead, he forwarded the email to a secure account, adding a single line, "Keep this." Then he set his phone down. In the Carter house, Amelia finished editing the draft and saved it. Again. Not sent. Not yet. She placed the phone back on the nightstand and closed her eyes. The house remained quiet, unchanged, orderly. From the outside, it would still appear intact. But within that order, something had shifted, not visibly, not dramatically, but in a way that would not. Lucas believed the structure held because he maintained it. Amelia knew it held because she had not yet chosen to reveal what she had seen. And that distinction, small, almost invisible, would matter more than anything else that followed. The invitation had been sent 2 weeks in advance. It arrived as a soft pastel card printed on thick paper with rounded edges and careful lettering. The kind of invitation that suggested warmth without excess. It named a date, a time, and a place, the Carter home, and included a small line at the bottom, celebrating Amelia and baby Carter. Lucas had approved every detail before it was sent. He had chosen the guest list, adjusted the wording, even suggested the tone of the message Amelia would forward to a few of her acquaintances. It was not that he distrusted her judgment entirely. He simply preferred to ensure consistency. That was the word he used. Consistency. On the morning of the gathering, the house was already prepared. Decorations were minimal but deliberate, light-colored streamers, a table arranged with neatly labeled dishes, small wrapped favors placed in symmetrical rows. Nothing appeared excessive. Everything appeared controlled. Amelia stood in the nursery doorway for a moment before the guests arrived, her hand resting lightly against the frame. The room had been arranged days earlier, but she still moved her eyes across it as if confirming something. The crib, the folded blankets, the small stack of clothes. Everything was ready. Her other hand, the one not supporting her weight, hovered briefly near her abdomen. The baby shifted in response, a quiet movement beneath her skin. Amelia exhaled slowly. There would be people in the house soon. Voices, questions, observations. She adjusted the sleeve of her dress carefully, ensuring it fell naturally along her arm. There were no visible injuries, nothing that required explanation. Not yet. In the living room, Lucas moved from one detail to the next, making small adjustments. A plate slightly out of alignment. A chair not angled correctly. He did not rush. He never rushed. Precision did not require urgency. At 1:02 p.m., the first guest arrived. The door opened with practiced ease, Lucas greeting them with a smile that suggested effortless hospitality. "Glad you could make it," he said, stepping aside. More followed. Neighbors, a few co-workers, a distant relative, people who knew them well enough to attend but not well enough to question what they saw. Amelia entered the room a few minutes later. The conversations shifted slightly when she appeared, not dramatically but enough to register. There was something about her presence that drew attention without asking for it. Perhaps it was the stillness, or the way she moved carefully as though aware of more than just the physical weight she carried. "You look beautiful," someone said. Amelia inclined her head. "Thank you. You must be so excited." She paused just briefly. "Yes." Lucas stepped closer, his hand resting lightly against the small of her back. The gesture appeared supportive. It guided her forward into the room, into the center of attention. "She's been handling everything really well," he said to the group, "even if she won't admit how tired she is." A few guests laughed softly. Amelia did not contradict him. She accepted a glass of water from the table, holding it carefully, her fingers steady. Conversations moved around her, questions about the due date, comments about the nursery, speculation about names. She answered when necessary. Short responses, accurate, contained. As the afternoon continued, the room filled with a low, continuous hum of conversation. Plates were passed. Gifts were opened. Small moments of celebration unfolded in predictable patterns. Lucas remained near the center of it all, moving easily between groups, maintaining the flow of interaction. He corrected small details as they arose: a misplaced item, an incorrect assumption, a comment that required adjustment. At one point, a guest asked Amelia a question about her doctor. "She switched practices last month, didn't you?" the woman said. Amelia opened her mouth to respond, but Lucas spoke first. "It wasn't a switch," he said smoothly. "Just a scheduling issue. Everything's been consistent." The guest nodded, accepting the correction. Amelia closed her mouth. It was a small moment. It passed quickly, but it did not go unnoticed. She shifted her weight slightly, her hand brushing against the side of the table. Her eyes moved not to Lucas, but to the faces around the room. Some had registered the interruption. Most had not. The pattern continued. Later, near the dining table, a conversation turned toward finances, light, casual, framed as general discussion. "Kids are expensive," someone joked. "You two must be planning ahead." Lucas smiled faintly. We've been very structured about that. Amelia's gaze lowered briefly. Lucas handles most of it, another guest added. That must be a relief. Lucas nodded. It simplifies things. Amelia said nothing. The statement remained in the air for a moment before the conversation shifted again. Across the room, a neighbor watched the exchange, her expression neutral. She took a sip of her drink, her eyes lingering slightly longer than necessary. She would remember that later, not as something significant, just as something slightly off. As the afternoon moved forward, the atmosphere tightened in ways that were not immediately visible. Lucas's movements became more precise, his corrections more frequent. The space between what was said and what was allowed to remain unchallenged grew narrower. Amelia adjusted with it. She spoke less, observed more, stored everything. At 3:17 p.m., a small disruption occurred. A gift wrapped in soft blue paper was placed slightly off-center on the table. It was a minor detail, barely noticeable. Lucas noticed. He stepped forward, adjusting it without comment. Amelia's hand rested briefly against the edge of the table as she watched him. "You're particular about things," a guest remarked lightly. Lucas smiled. "It's just easier when things are in order." The room accepted that. Order was not a problem. Order was respectable. Amelia's fingers tightened slightly against the table's edge, only for a moment. Then she released it. The afternoon began to wind down. Guests gathered their belongings, offering final congratulations, lingering briefly in the doorway before stepping back into the quiet predictability of the neighborhood. "Let us know when the baby arrives," someone called out. "We will," Lucas replied. The door closed. Silence returned, but it was not the same silence as before. The decorations remained. The dishes. The small signs of celebration. But the structure had shifted. Lucas moved through the room, collecting items, restoring order where it had been disrupted. "You didn't need to be so quiet," he said, without looking at Amelia. "People expect a little more engagement." Amelia stood near the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "I answered what they asked," she said. "You could have offered more," Lucas replied. "It comes across as distant." Amelia turned slightly. "I didn't think that was necessary." Lucas paused. For a fraction of a second, something in his expression changed. Not anger. Not yet. Just a narrowing. A recalibration. "It's always necessary," he said. The room held that statement without responding. Amelia nodded once. The moment passed. Lucas returned to the table, continuing to straighten the remaining items. Amelia watched him. Not with defiance, not with fear, with attention. Every movement, every correction, every shift in tone, she noted them. Not aloud, not visibly, but with a clarity that had been building long before this day. Outside, the light had begun to fade slightly, casting longer shadows across the yard. The house from the street still appeared exactly as it had that morning. Ordered, respectable, intact. Inside, the tension had not broken. It had only gathered. And it would not remain contained for much longer. It happened after the last guest had left. The house was still carrying the faint echo of conversation, the kind that lingers in walls longer than it should. Wrapping paper sat folded in a neat pile near the table. Plates had been rinsed, but not yet put away. The decorations remained slightly out of place now that no one was there to see them. Lucas moved through the room with quiet efficiency, restoring what he considered proper order. A ribbon adjusted, a chair pushed back into alignment, a glass relocated to its correct position. Amelia stood near the kitchen counter, one hand resting against its edge, the other supporting the weight of her abdomen. Her body had begun to tire in a deeper way now, fatigue settling into her bones rather than just her muscles. "You could have handled that better," Lucas said. His voice was not raised. It did not need to be. Amelia did not turn immediately. She reached for a cloth and began wiping the counter in slow, even strokes. "I handled it," she replied. Lucas paused behind her. "That's not the same thing," he said. The cloth moved across the surface again. A small, repetitive motion. Controlled. "What did you want me to do?" Amelia asked. Lucas stepped closer, his reflection appearing faintly in the window above the sink. "Engage," he said. "Show some presence. People notice when you don't." Amelia rinsed the cloth under the faucet, squeezing out the water carefully. "I was present," she said. Lucas exhaled, a slight shift in his posture. You were there, he corrected. That's different. The distinction hung between them. Amelia turned off the water. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lucas reached for one of the remaining gifts on the table, a small box wrapped in soft paper. He examined it briefly, then set it down again, slightly off-center. It was not intentional. Amelia noticed. She stepped forward slowly, her movement deliberate, and adjusted the box so that it aligned with the others. Lucas watched her do it. Something in his expression changed, not visibly enough for an outsider to identify, but enough for Amelia to recognize. You see, he said quietly, you understand order when it suits you. Amelia did not respond. She turned back toward the counter, placing the cloth down beside the sink. Lucas took a step closer. That's what I mean, he continued. You choose when to participate. Amelia rested both hands lightly on the counter, steadying herself. I'm tired, she said. Lucas's gaze shifted briefly to her abdomen, then back to her face. We're both tired, he replied. The statement was even balanced. It left no room for comparison. Amelia nodded once. She began to move past him toward the hallway. Lucas reached out. His hand closed around her arm. Not abruptly. Not at first. Just enough to stop her movement. Amelia stilled. Don't walk away while I'm speaking, he said. The grip tightened slightly. Amelia's body adjusted instinctively, compensating for the pressure for the imbalance created by the sudden hold. I'm not walking away, she said. I'm going to sit down. Lucas's fingers pressed more firmly against her arm. You can sit when we're finished, he said. The room seemed to narrow. Not physically, but in the way attention becomes focused, condensed. Amelia did not pull away. She did not struggle. She shifted her weight carefully, trying to relieve the pressure without escalating the moment. I am 9 months pregnant, she said, her voice still even. I need to sit. Lucas's grip tightened again. The change was small, incremental, but it was enough. You always need something, he said. There was no anger in the words, only frustration, controlled but present. Amelia's breath slowed. She placed her free hand against the counter, grounding herself. Lucas, she said quietly. It was not a plea. It was not a warning. Just his name. He did not release her. Instead, he shifted his hold, his fingers sliding slightly higher along her arm, adjusting for leverage. The movement was subtle, but it changed everything. Amelia felt it immediately, the shift in pressure, the angle, the imbalance it created in her stance. Let go, she said. Lucas exhaled sharply. You're overreacting, he replied. And then in a moment that would later be described in statements, in reports, in careful neutral language, he pulled. Not violently. Not with the intention he would later deny, but with enough force, enough to move her body in a direction it was not prepared to go. Amelia's balance shifted. Her foot caught slightly against the edge of the rug. Her body twisted instinctively, trying to protect the weight she carried. And then, the sound. A sharp, contained crack. Not loud, but unmistakable. Lucas released her immediately. As if the contact itself had become unacceptable the moment it produced consequence. Amelia did not fall. She remained upright, her hand still braced against the counter. Her arm, however, did not move the same way. The silence that followed was immediate. Absolute. Lucas stepped back. That he began, his voice already changing. That was. He stopped, recalibrated. You slipped, he said. The words came quickly now. You lost your footing. Amelia did not look at him. Her gaze had lowered, not in submission, but in focus. Her breathing remained controlled, though slightly uneven now. Pain moved through her arm in steady waves, clear, defined, undeniable. I told you not to rush, Lucas continued, his tone shifting fully into concern. You need to be more careful. Amelia said nothing. Her silence did not agree. It did not disagree. It simply existed. Lucas stepped closer again, but more cautiously now. Let me see, he said, reaching toward her arm. Amelia moved it away. A small movement, but deliberate. I'm fine, she said. The statement was not accurate. Lucas hesitated, then nodded as if accepting the version of events he had just created. We should still have it checked, he said. Just to be safe. Amelia turned slightly, her body moving with care now, each motion calculated to avoid further pain. Yes, she said. Her voice remained steady. Outside, a car passed along the street, its tires brushing against the pavement. The world beyond the house continued without interruption. Inside, the structure had finally broken, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that could not be undone. Lucas reached for his keys. "I'll drive," he said. Amelia did not argue. She walked slowly toward the door, her posture controlled, her movements precise. Each step was measured, each breath accounted for. Behind her, Lucas turned off the lights, straightened the remaining decorations, ensured the house appeared as it had before. Ordered, intact. As they stepped outside, the evening air felt cooler, quieter. The neighborhood remained unchanged. No one came out. No one asked questions. The door closed behind them with a soft final sound. And in the stillness that followed, one truth had settled into place. This would not remain inside the house, not this time. The emergency entrance doors opened automatically as they always did, without urgency or hesitation. The motion sensors did not distinguish between routine and consequence. They responded to presence. Amelia stepped inside first. Her pace was slow but steady, each movement calculated to maintain balance. Her right arm remained close to her body, supported by instinct rather than structure. The pain had settled into something consistent now, no longer sharp in bursts, but deep, continuous, impossible to ignore. Lucas followed closely behind. "We just need to get her checked," he said to the front desk nurse, before Amelia had fully reached the counter. His tone carried controlled concern, measured and appropriate. "She slipped at home. She's 9 months pregnant." The nurse looked from him to Amelia. Her gaze lingered there. "Ma'am," she said gently, "can you tell me what happened?" Amelia met her eyes. "I fell," she said. The words were simple. They matched what Lucas had already said. The nurse nodded, but her expression did not fully settle. She typed something into the computer, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. "Let's get you seated," she said. Amelia lowered herself into the chair with care. The movement required coordination now, protecting her abdomen, stabilizing her weight, minimizing the shift in her injured arm. She did it without assistance. Lucas stood beside her, one hand resting lightly on the back of the chair. "She's been a little unsteady," he added. "The pregnancy, it's been harder on her than expected." The nurse glanced at Amelia again. "How far along are you?" she asked. 39 weeks, Amelia replied. "Any contractions?" "No." The nurse nodded and entered the information. Within minutes, Amelia was guided through a set of double doors into the triage area. The lighting shifted brighter, more clinical. The sounds changed as well. Monitors, footsteps, voices that carried urgency without panic. Lucas moved to follow. "I'll stay with her," he said. A second nurse stepped forward, her tone polite but firm. "We'll need to do an initial assessment first," she said. "You can join her shortly." Lucas hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Of course." The curtain closed. Inside the small examination space, Amelia sat on the edge of the bed. A blood pressure cuff was wrapped around her arm, the uninjured one, while another nurse adjusted a monitor against her abdomen. "We're just going to check on the baby," she said. "Make sure everything's okay." Amelia nodded. The monitor picked up the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Strong. Consistent. The nurse listened for a moment, then allowed a small professional smile. "That sounds good," she said. Amelia's shoulders lowered slightly. Relief did not show on her face, but it registered. Another staff member entered, a physician, older, composed, her movements efficient. "I'm Dr. Harlan," she said. "I understand you had a fall." Amelia inclined her head. "Yes, doctor." Harlan's gaze moved to Amelia's arm. "Let's take a look," she said. Carefully, the sleeve was adjusted. The swelling was already visible, subtle but unmistakable. The alignment of the arm just slightly off confirmed what Amelia already knew. "This is going to require imaging," Dr. Harlan said. She did not ask if it hurt. She could see that it did. Before stepping out, she paused. "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" she asked. The question was quiet, not routine. Amelia met her eyes. For a moment, the silence held. Then Amelia said no. Dr. Harlan nodded once. "All right." She left the curtain partially open as she exited. Minutes later, Lucas was allowed back in. He entered with the same measured concern, his expression calibrated to match the environment. "How is she?" he asked. "Doctor." Harlan, now reviewing notes nearby, responded without looking up immediately. "We're evaluating her arm and monitoring the baby," she said. "We'll need an X-ray." Lucas nodded. "Of course," he said. "Whatever she needs." He stepped closer to Amelia, his voice lowering slightly. "I told you we should have been more careful," he said. Amelia did not respond. Her attention remained on the monitor, on the steady sound that confirmed what mattered most. The X-ray confirmed the fracture. Clean, definitive, not ambiguous. A technician positioned her arm, carefully minimizing movement. The process was clinical, detached. The image appeared on the screen within minutes. "Doctor." Harlan reviewed it, then turned back to Amelia. "It's broken," she said simply. "We'll need to immobilize it." Lucas exhaled sharply. "That's," he began, then stopped. "That's unexpected." The word choice lingered. Unexpected. "Doctor." Harlan's gaze shifted briefly toward him, then back to Amelia. "We see this kind of injury in falls," she said. The statement was neutral, but not entirely. Amelia listened. She did not confirm. She did not deny. A nurse began preparing a temporary splint. The materials were laid out with practiced efficiency. As they worked, another staff member entered quietly, a social worker, her presence unobtrusive but intentional. "Hi," she said gently. "I'm here just to check in." Lucas turned slightly. "We're fine," he said quickly. "It was just a fall." The social worker nodded, but her attention remained on Amelia. "I'd like to speak with her alone for a moment," she said. Lucas's posture shifted. "There's no need," he replied. "It's standard procedure," she said calmly. The room held a brief pause. Then Lucas stepped back. "Of course," he said. He moved toward the door. "I'll be right outside." The curtain closed again. The social worker pulled a chair closer, lowering her voice. "Amelia," she said, "are you safe at home?" The question did not come with pressure. It came with space. Amelia looked at her. Her expression remained composed. "Yes," she said. The answer was immediate. Clear. The social worker studied her for a moment longer. "If that ever changes," she said, "you can tell us. Or anyone here." Amelia nodded. The splint was secured. The arm immobilized. Pain managed but not removed. Before the conversation could continue, a nurse re-entered. "We're going to admit her for observation," she said, "given how far along she is." The decision shifted the dynamic. Time expanded. Records deepened. Lucas was informed shortly after. "That's probably for the best," he said. "Just to be safe." He remained composed, cooperative, concerned. All the necessary things. But as the paperwork was completed, as the forms were signed, as the information was entered into systems that extended beyond the hospital walls, a report was generated. Routine. Mandatory. It did not accuse. It did not conclude. It simply documented. A pregnant woman. A broken arm. A fall. And a series of small inconsistencies that did not fully align. The report moved through channels Lucas could not see. Not yet. In the hospital room, Amelia lay back against the pillows, her arms secured, her body finally allowed to rest. The monitor beside her continued its steady rhythm. The baby remained stable. That mattered. Lucas sat in the chair nearby, his posture controlled, his presence contained. "We'll get through this," he said. Amelia turned her head slightly, her gaze settling somewhere beyond him. She did not respond. The room was quiet again. But this silence was different. It no longer belonged to the house. It belonged to a system that had begun to observe. And once something entered that system, it did not disappear. The report did not travel loudly. It moved the way most institutional processes do, quietly, methodically, through channels designed to avoid attention. It was entered into a system flagged, according to protocol, reviewed by individuals whose responsibility was not to judge but to notice. And eventually, it intersected with a name. Ethan Brooks did not receive the report directly. He received something else. At 5:42 a.m., his phone vibrated once on the nightstand beside him. He reached for it without opening his eyes, fully accustomed to early calls, to messages that rarely arrived without reason. The notification was brief. A secure email. No subject line visible from the preview. Ethan sat up. The room around him was still dark, the faint outline of furniture barely visible. He opened the message, his gaze sharpening as he read. The contents were minimal. A forwarded note, a system reference, a location, and one line, possible domestic incident, name flagged Amelia Carter. Ethan did not move immediately. He read it again. The message did not contain details. It did not need to. It contained enough. He swung his legs off the bed and stood already reaching for the lamp. Light filled the room, cutting through the quiet. His expression did not change dramatically. It narrowed, focused. He tapped into another system, entering credentials with practiced speed. The screen populated with limited access data, hospital intake, general notes, timestamps. Pregnant, fractured arm. Report filed. Ethan exhaled slowly. Not anger. Not yet. Assessment. He checked the time zone difference, calculated the hour in Virginia, then reached for his phone again. He did not call immediately. Instead, he sent a message. Are you safe? No elaboration, no pressure, just the question. In the hospital room, Amelia's phone rested on the tray beside her bed. The screen lit up softly, the message appearing against the dim background. She looked at it. Her expression remained unchanged. Her thumb hovered briefly above the screen. Then she typed. Yes. The reply was immediate. Contained. Ethan read it within seconds. He did not interpret the word at face value. He never had. Instead, he considered what it meant within context, what was said, what was not said, and what Amelia would choose to omit unless necessary. He placed the phone down and reached for another device. Calls followed. Quiet ones. To individuals who understood discretion. A civilian attorney with experience in family law. A contact within a federal liaison office. A retired investigator who owed him nothing but respected him enough to listen. Ethan did not issue commands. He asked for information, verification, guidance on jurisdiction. He moved within the limits of what was appropriate, and just close enough to those limits to ensure nothing important was missed. Back in Virginia, Lucas sat beside Amelia's bed, reviewing something on his phone. His posture remained relaxed, his presence steady, as if the events of the previous evening had already been resolved in his mind. They're keeping you another night, he said, without looking up. Just standard procedure. Amelia nodded slightly. Yes. Lucas glanced at her arm. It'll heal, he added. These things happen. The phrasing was careful, neutral, designed to minimize. Amelia turned her head slightly toward the window. The early morning light had begun to filter through, soft and gray. Her silence did not challenge him, but it did not support him either. Lucas shifted in his chair. I've already explained everything, he continued. They understand it was an accident. Amelia's gaze remained on the window. I didn't say it wasn't, she replied. The sentence landed without emphasis. Lucas paused. Something in that response did not align with what he expected, but he let it pass. For now, a knock at the door interrupted the moment. A nurse entered, followed by Dr. Harlan. We're going to run a few more checks, the doctor said, just to be thorough. Lucas stood. Of course, he said. Whatever you need. Dr. Harlan glanced briefly at Amelia, then back at the chart in her hands. We'll also have someone from patient services stop by, she added. Lucas's expression remained unchanged. That's fine, he said. He stepped aside, allowing them space. The procedures continued, routine, structured, documented. Each action added another layer to the record. Each observation, no matter how small, contributed to something larger than any single moment. Later that afternoon, as Lucas stepped out to take a call, the social worker returned. She did not sit this time. She stood near the foot of the bed, her posture open, her tone unchanged. I know you said you're safe, she began. I'm not here to challenge that. Amelia looked at her. The woman continued, but I want you to understand what support is available regardless of how you choose to define your situation. She placed a small card on the tray beside the bed. No logos, no bold text, just a number, a name, and a brief line of explanation. Amelia glanced at it. She did not pick it up. Okay, she said. The social worker nodded. That's all, she replied. She left the room as quietly as she had entered. Moments later, Lucas returned. Everything good, he asked. Yes, Amelia said. He followed her gaze to the tray, noticing the card. What's that, he asked. Information. Amelia replied. Lucas picked it up, scanning it quickly. His expression did not change, but his grip tightened slightly before he set it back down. They have to give those out, he said. It doesn't mean anything. Amelia did not respond. The card remained where it was, unmoved, unclaimed, but not unnoticed. As evening approached, the hospital floor settled into a quieter rhythm. Lights dimmed slightly. Voices lowered. The steady sounds of monitoring equipment continued constant and unchanging. Amelia rested her breathing, even her body finally allowed a measure of stillness. Lucas remained nearby, his presence consistent. He believed the situation had stabilized, that the narrative had been accepted, that the system had no reason to look further. He did not know about the message. He did not know about the calls. He did not know that beyond the hospital walls, beyond the state, beyond his understanding, a different kind of attention had already begun to take shape. In another city under a different sky, Ethan Brooks stood at his window, phone in hand, reviewing the limited information he had gathered so far. It was not enough. Not yet, but it was enough to confirm one thing. This was not over. Not by accident, not by explanation, and not by silence. He placed the phone down slowly, then reached for his jacket. There were processes to follow, boundaries to respect, but also lines that once crossed did not return to where they had been. And someone had crossed one. The hospital room was quiet in a way that did not invite conversation. Machines continued their low, consistent hum. The monitor traced steady lines across its screen, marking a rhythm that did not need interpretation. Outside the window, the sky had shifted into a pale gray, neither fully day nor entirely overcast, an in-between that suited the moment. Amelia sat upright in bed, her arms secured in a rigid splint, supported by layers of white bandaging that limited movement to near stillness. The weight of it had become familiar now. Not comfortable, but predictable. Predictability mattered. Lucas had stepped out again. He said it was for a call. He often said that. Amelia did not track where he went. She tracked when. The door had closed at 2:16 p.m. She noted the time without looking at a clock. The habit had formed long ago, anchoring events to moments, aligning memory with sequence. Her phone rested on the tray beside her screen, dark. Next to it, the small card from patient services remained untouched. And beneath that, the envelope Lucas had brought from home. He had handed it to her that morning with a casual gesture. "Just in case you want to look at it again," he had said. "So we're on the same page." Amelia had taken it without comment. Now, with the room empty, she reached for it. Her movements were slower than usual, limited by the immobilized arm. She adjusted her position carefully, using her left hand to open the envelope along the same crease as before. The papers inside slid out in a neat stack. Bank statements, transaction summaries, account details. At first glance, they appeared ordinary, structured, legitimate. That was part of their design. Amelia placed the pages flat against the tray, smoothing them with her palm. Her eyes moved across the lines, not quickly, not scanning, but reading with deliberate attention. She did not focus on the totals. She focused on the patterns, dates, intervals, amounts that repeated with slight variations, transfers that moved in consistent directions, accounts that appeared briefly, then disappeared. She had seen this before, not in her own life, but enough to recognize the shape of it. This was not disorganization, it was intention. Her gaze paused on one entry, a transfer small enough to avoid immediate attention, large enough to matter over time. The destination account number was partially obscured, but not entirely. Amelia reached for her phone. She unlocked it, opening her email drafts. The document from earlier remained there, structured incomplete only in the sense that it had not yet been finalized. She began to add to it. March 14, review of hospital-delivered statements. Observed repeated transfers to secondary accounts. Pattern suggests staged movement rather than isolated transactions. She paused, then added, account fragments indicate multiple endpoints. Her typing was slow, careful. Every word chosen for clarity, not emphasis, not persuasion, clarity. She saved the draft, not sent, not yet. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Amelia looked up. "Come in," she said. The door opened slightly. A nurse entered, carrying a clipboard. Just checking in, she said. How are you feeling? Amelia glanced at her arm. It's manageable, she replied. The nurse nodded, stepping closer to review the monitor. Baby's still doing well, she said. Strong heartbeat. Amelia allowed herself a small exhale. Good. The nurse made a note on the chart, then hesitated briefly. Do you need anything? She asked. Amelia's eyes flicked briefly to the papers on the tray, then back to the nurse. No, she said. The nurse smiled faintly and left. The door closed again. The room returned to its previous state. Amelia looked back at the documents. She adjusted the top page slightly, aligning it with the others. Then she noticed something else. A sequence of transactions that did not follow the same pattern. Larger amounts, less frequent, moved at irregular intervals. Her eyes narrowed slightly. This was different. She traced the dates with her finger, mapping them mentally. Each one corresponded to a day Lucas had been out longer than expected. A meeting, a delay, an explanation that had not required detail. Amelia reached for her phone again. This time she opened a different application. Notes. A separate file. Untitled. She began to type. March 2. Late return 8:47 p.m. March 6. Extended meeting 9:12 p.m. March 11. Unscheduled absence. Unknown return time. She cross-referenced the dates with the transactions. The alignment was not perfect, but it was close enough. Close enough to suggest coordination, not coincidence. Amelia stopped typing. She leaned back slightly, her head resting against the pillow. Her breathing remained steady, her expression unchanged. But something in her understanding had shifted. This was no longer about control within the house. It extended beyond that. Lucas had not just been managing her. He had been preparing something, structuring something. And whatever it was, it required movement, money, separation. The door opened again. This time Lucas returned. He stepped inside with the same composed expression, his presence filling the space in a way that was both familiar and contained. Everything okay? He asked. Amelia looked at him. Yes. Lucas's gaze moved to the tray. The papers. The phone. Everything exactly where it should be. He nodded slightly. Good, he said. He stepped closer, adjusting the chair beside the bed. I spoke to billing, he added. Everything's handled. Amelia did not ask what that meant. Lucas sat down, leaning back slightly. You don't need to worry about any of that, he continued. I've taken care of it. Amelia's eyes rested on him for a moment longer than usual. I know, she said. The words were neutral, but they carried a weight he did not fully register. Lucas relaxed slightly. The reassurance had landed. At least he believed it had. He reached for his phone, checking a message briefly before setting it aside. The room settled again. Amelia turned her attention back to the window. The light had shifted once more, becoming softer, less defined. Time was moving. Quietly. Consistently. Lucas believed the structure remained intact because he continued to maintain it. Amelia understood something else entirely. The structure had already begun to separate. Not visibly. Not yet. But in ways that would not be reversed. On the tray beside her, the documents remained aligned. The notes saved. The patterns recorded. Nothing had been confronted. Nothing had been revealed. But everything had been seen. And once something is fully seen, it does not return to being invisible. The recordings had never been meant for confrontation. They had begun as fragments incidental, almost accidental. A voicemail saved because of its tone. A security camera clip reviewed for something unrelated. A moment captured not for evidence but for memory. Over time, those fragments had accumulated. Amelia did not revisit them often. She did not need to. She knew what they contained. Now, in the quiet of the hospital room, with the steady rhythm of the monitor beside her and the weight of the splint anchoring her arm, she opened them again. Her phone rested against the tray, angled carefully so she could navigate with one hand. The screen illuminated her face in soft light, revealing nothing beyond focus. She opened a folder. Untitled. Inside, a sequence of files appeared. Dates. Times. No descriptions. Amelia selected the first. The audio began without introduction. Lucas's voice filled the space, clear, controlled, familiar. You're not understanding the situation, he said. There was a pause. Amelia's voice followed quieter. I'm trying to. You don't need to try, Lucas replied. You need to listen. The recording ended there. It was brief, incomplete, but it carried weight. Amelia closed it and moved to the next. This one contained video grainy taken from the corner of a room. The angle was high detached. It showed the kitchen, the edge of the table, part of the hallway. Lucas stood near the counter. Amelia was partially visible. You agreed to this, he was saying. I said I'd look at it, Amelia responded. That's the same thing, Lucas said. No, she said. There was a pause. Lucas stepped closer. The camera did not capture his face clearly, but it captured the movement, the space closing, the shift. The video ended. Amelia did not rewind it. She did not need to see it again. She moved to another file. A voicemail this time. Lucas's voice again, slightly different, more controlled, more deliberate. If anyone asks you, tell them it was nothing, he said. You don't need to complicate things. A brief silence. Then we handle this internally. The message ended. Amelia's thumb hovered over the screen. She did not press play on the next file immediately. Instead, she leaned back slightly, her gaze shifting toward the window. Outside, the sky had darkened, further the edges of the buildings, softened by distance and fading light. Inside the room remained unchanged. Lucas sat nearby, his attention on his phone, unaware of what Amelia was reviewing. That was part of the pattern. He believed control extended to what was visible, what was spoken, what was acknowledged. He did not account for what was stored quietly, what was preserved without reaction. Amelia returned her attention to the phone. She opened the next recording. This one was longer. Lucas's voice again, but with a different tone, less composed, more strained. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. I'm asking questions, Amelia replied. You don't need to ask questions about things I've already handled. There was a pause. Then, do you trust me or not? The question lingered. Amelia's voice did not respond immediately. When it did, it was quieter. That's not what this is about. The recording ended. Amelia closed the file. She did not label it. She did not categorize it. The structure existed in her mind. The order was clear. She knew what each piece meant. She knew how they connected. The door opened. Lucas stood glancing toward the hallway before stepping back inside. Everything okay? He asked. Amelia turned the phone screen off. Yes. Lucas returned to his seat, his movements unchanged. I spoke to the doctor, he said. They're still planning to keep you overnight. Amelia nodded. Okay. Lucas leaned back slightly. They're being cautious, he added. Which is fine. Amelia did not respond. Her hand rested lightly on the tray near the phone. The recordings remained where they were. Unseen, unacknowledged, but present. Lucas glanced at her arm. It'll heal, he said again. The repetition carried an edge of reassurance, not for her, but for himself. Amelia's gaze remained steady. Yes. The word was neutral. It did not challenge. It did not agree. Lucas shifted slightly, adjusting his posture. You know this wasn't intentional, he said. The statement was delivered carefully, measured. Amelia looked at him. I didn't say it was, she replied. The room held that exchange without resolution. Lucas nodded once as if confirming something. Good, he said. He reached for his phone again. The conversation ended. Or appeared to. Amelia turned her attention back to the tray. Her phone remained still. She did not reopen the recordings. She did not need to. They had already served their purpose, not as confrontation, not yet, as confirmation of pattern, of tone, of intent. Across the country, Ethan Brooks sat at a desk reviewing a different set of files. The information was limited, fragmented, but growing. A contact had responded to his earlier inquiry, providing general data, nothing specific, but enough to suggest that financial movement had occurred within accounts connected to Lucas Carter. Not illegal, not definitively, but structured. Ethan leaned back slightly, considering. He did not jump to conclusions. He did not act without verification, but he recognized patterns when they appeared. And this was a pattern. He reached for his phone, typed a message, paused, then deleted it. Instead, he opened a new document, began to list names, contacts, Processes. He would not intervene directly. Not yet. But he would ensure that when the time came, there would be no gaps. Back in the hospital room, Amelia adjusted her position slightly, careful of her arm, mindful of the monitor beside her. The baby shifted again. A small movement. Contained. Alive. Amelia placed her hand gently against her abdomen. Her breathing slowed. Steady. Outside, the hallway carried the muted sounds of movement staff, passing distant voices, the quiet rhythm of a place that functioned continuously, regardless of individual circumstance. Inside, the room remained still. Lucas believed the situation had stabilized, that the explanation had been accepted, that what had happened could be contained within language, within narrative, within his version of events. Amelia understood something else. The truth did not need to be spoken immediately to exist. It only needed to be preserved. And once preserved, it did not disappear. It waited. For the right moment. For the right place. For the right structure in which it could no longer be dismissed. She rested her head back against the pillow, her eyes closing briefly. Not in exhaustion, in clarity. Everything she needed was already there. Documented. Recorded. Aligned. She would not rush. She would not confront. She would not argue. She would wait. And when the time came, she would not need to say much at all. Labor began without announcement. There was no dramatic shift, no sudden urgency that demanded attention from everyone in the room. It started as a subtle tightening, something Amelia recognized not through panic but through pattern. A sensation distinct from discomfort, separate from the pain in her arm, precise in its timing. She opened her eyes. The hospital room remained dim, the lights softened for the night. The monitor beside her continued its steady rhythm, marking what mattered most. Another contraction followed, measured, contained. Amelia turned her head slightly toward the clock. 3, 1, 2, a.m. She did not call out immediately. Instead, she placed her hand gently against her abdomen, feeling the movement beneath the surface. The baby responded not with urgency, but with presence. Alive. Consistent. That was enough. Lucas stirred in the chair beside the bed, shifting slightly but not fully waking. His posture had settled into something less controlled in sleep, his shoulders lower, his breathing uneven. Amelia watched him for a moment. Then she reached for the call button. The nurse arrived within minutes. "Are you feeling contractions?" she asked. Amelia nodded. "They've started." The nurse moved efficiently, checking monitors, adjusting sensors, noting the timing. "Let's take a look," she said. Lucas woke fully as the room shifted into motion. "What's happening?" he asked, pushing himself upright. "She's in labor," the nurse replied. Lucas stood immediately. Already, the question carried surprise but not concern. Amelia remained still, her focus inward. The process had begun, and like everything else it would move forward, whether acknowledged or not. The hours that followed did not unfold dramatically. They progressed, steadily, predictably. Amelia was moved to a delivery room, larger, brighter, structured for a different kind of monitoring. Her arm remained secured in the splint, limiting her movement, requiring adjustments in positioning. The staff adapted. They always did. Lucas remained present, his behavior aligned with expectation. He asked the right questions, stood in the appropriate place, maintained a tone of controlled support. "You're doing fine," he said at one point. Amelia did not respond. She did not need reassurance. She needed space. Time passed in measured intervals. Contractions increased. Pain intensified, not chaotic but rhythmic. Amelia breathed through it, her body responding in ways that did not require instruction. She followed the process, not resisting, not dramatizing, just enduring. At 6:47 a.m., Dr. Harlan entered the room. "How are we doing?" she asked. Amelia met her gaze. "Progressing." Dr. Harlan nodded, reviewing the monitors. "Everything looks stable," she said. "We'll continue as planned." Lucas stood nearby, watching the exchange. "Is there anything else we should be doing?" he asked. Dr. Harlan glanced at him briefly. "No," she said. "Just let her focus." The instruction was simple. Lucas stepped back slightly. For a moment the room aligned around Amelia, not as a subject but as the center of a process that required no external control. That shift was subtle, But it mattered. By mid-morning, the atmosphere had changed, not in volume, in density. The room felt more focused, more contained. Every movement had purpose. Every voice lowered. Amelia's breathing deepened her body, working through each contraction with increasing intensity. Her injured arm remained still, secured, removed from the process as much as possible. But the presence of it, constant, unchanging, remained. A reminder, not of pain, of sequence. Lucas moved occasionally, adjusting his position, stepping out briefly, returning without explanation. His phone remained active. Messages sent. Received. Handled. At 10:12 a.m., he stepped outside again. "I'll be right back," he said. Amelia did not respond. The door closed behind him. Inside the room, the staff continued their work. The nurse adjusted the monitor. Dr. Harlan reviewed the chart. "Almost there," she said. Amelia nodded. Her focus had narrowed completely now. Everything outside the process had receded. There was no space for anything else. Lucas stood in the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said quietly. "It's happening now." A pause. "No, everything's under control." Another pause. "I'll handle it." He ended the call. For a moment he stood still. Then he straightened his posture, adjusted his expression, and returned to the room. At 11:03 a.m., the final stage began. The room shifted again, more movement, more attention, but still controlled. Amelia followed the instructions given to her, her body responding with precision. Push, pause, breathe, repeat. There was no panic, no raised voices, only direction and response. Lucas stood near the foot of the bed, now his presence more visible, more engaged. "You're almost there," he said. Amelia did not look at him. Her focus remained forward. At 11:28 a.m., the child was born. The sound came first. A cry, clear, immediate, undeniable. The room paused for a fraction of a second, then moved again. The baby was lifted, examined briefly, then placed carefully against Amelia's chest. She looked down. For the first time in hours, perhaps longer, her expression shifted. Not dramatically, not visibly to anyone who wasn't watching closely. But it changed. Her hand, the uninjured one, moved gently against the child's back. Alive, present, real. That was all that mattered. Lucas stepped closer. "A boy," he said. The statement was factual, not emotional. Amelia did not respond. Her attention remained on the child. The rest of the room continued its work, checking, recording, documenting. Dr. Harlan nodded once. "Healthy," she said. The words settled into the space. Later, in the quieter hours that followed, Amelia lay back against the bed, the child resting beside her. Her arm remained secured, unchanged. Lucas sat nearby. "We did it," he said. The phrasing was deliberate, shared, inclusive. Amelia turned her head slightly. "We," she repeated. Lucas paused, then smiled faintly. "You know what I mean," he said. Amelia did not respond. The silence that followed was not confrontational. It was simply accurate. The nurse entered briefly, checking vitals, making notes. "Everything looks good," she said. Amelia nodded. Lucas stood, stretching slightly. "I'll take care of the paperwork," he said. Amelia's gaze shifted toward him. "Which paperwork?" Lucas hesitated. "Just standard forms," he replied. "Nothing you need to worry about." Amelia looked at him for a moment longer, then turned back to the child. "Okay," she said. As Lucas left the room, the door closing softly behind him, Amelia adjusted her position, slightly careful of her arm, mindful of the small weight beside her. The baby shifted. She placed her hand gently against him. Her breathing slowed. Steady. Measured. Outside, the room processes continued. Forms were filled. Records updated. Information entered into systems that did not forget. Inside, Amelia remained still. Not passive. Not unaware. But present. Fully. The child beside her did not know the structure he had entered. Did not know the tension that had preceded his arrival. Did not know the patterns that had been recorded, the evidence preserved, the truth waiting. He only knew breath, warmth, contact. And Amelia knew something else. That nothing had been resolved. Nothing had been concluded. The birth had not erased what came before. It had only raised the stakes, and whatever came next would not be decided by words alone. The paperwork did not begin in the courtroom. It began in quiet rooms across desks within folders that carried no visible urgency. It began with forms that looked routine and language that appeared neutral. Amelia did not rush into it. She waited until she could sit upright without assistance, until her breathing no longer carried the weight of labor, until the rhythm of the hospital no longer felt overwhelming. The child lay beside her asleep, his presence small but steady. A nurse had shown her how to position him safely, how to support him with one arm when the other could not move. Amelia learned quickly. She always had. Lucas stood near the window, reviewing something on his phone. His posture had returned to its usual alignment, controlled, composed, as though the past days had already been absorbed into a version of events he could manage. "They'll discharge you tomorrow," he said. Amelia nodded slightly. "That's what they said." Lucas turned toward her. "We should keep things simple when we get home," he added. "No unnecessary complications." Amelia looked at him. "What do you mean by that?" Lucas paused. "Visitors," he said. "Questions. People tend to overreact." Amelia's gaze remained steady. "They only react to what they see." Lucas's expression tightened, but only briefly. "They see what they're told," he replied. The statement was calm, measured. It carried no visible threat, but it defined the boundary. Amelia did not respond. She shifted her attention back to the child. The conversation ended, or appeared to. A few hours later, a different kind of visitor arrived. The attorney introduced herself quietly, her tone professional, her presence deliberate but not intrusive. "My name is Karen Whitfield," she said. "I was asked to check in with you." Lucas turned immediately. By who, he asked. Karen met his gaze without hesitation. "I'm here for Amelia." Lucas's posture changed slightly. "This isn't necessary," he said. "We're handling everything." Karen did not respond to him. Her attention remained on Amelia. "If you're comfortable," she said, "we can speak privately." The room held a brief silence. Lucas stepped forward. "There's no need for that," he said. Karen's tone remained unchanged. "It's standard to offer," she replied. Amelia looked at Lucas, then back at Karen. "Yes," she said, "we can speak." Lucas exhaled slowly. "I'll step out," he said, though the words carried reluctance. He left the room, the door closing behind him with controlled precision. Karen moved closer, lowering her voice. "I won't assume anything," she said. "I'm here to provide information." Amelia nodded. Karen placed a folder on the tray beside the bed. Inside were documents, not accusations, not conclusions. Options, protective orders, custody considerations, financial disclosures. Each page structured clear, unemotional. "This doesn't require immediate action," Karen said, "but it does require clarity." Amelia looked at the documents. Her expression did not change. "I have records," she said. Karen's gaze sharpened slightly. "What kind of records?" Medical, Amelia replied. "Financial. Audio." Karen did not react visibly, but something in her posture shifted. "That's important," she said. Amelia nodded. "I know." Karen paused, then added, "Consistency matters more than volume." Amelia's eyes met hers. "I've been consistent." Karen closed the folder gently. "Then we proceed carefully," she said. The door opened. Lucas returned. Karen stood. "I'll leave my contact information," she said, "if you choose to move forward." Lucas did not speak. He watched. Karen placed a card beside the folder and left. The room settled again. Lucas looked at the documents, then at Amelia. "You didn't need that," he said. Amelia did not respond immediately. Then quietly, "I didn't say I did." Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. "This will complicate things," he said. Amelia adjusted the blanket over the child. "They're already complicated." Lucas did not answer. He sat down. The space between them remained unchanged, but something had shifted beneath it. Later that evening, Amelia opened her phone. She reviewed her drafts, the emails, the notes, the timelines, everything aligned. She selected one, not the longest, not the most detailed, the one that connected the clearest sequence. She added a final line, "Prepared for legal review." Then she attached the documents, the bank records, the transaction summaries, The dates. She did not hesitate. She sent it. The message left her phone without sound. No confirmation beyond the absence of it. But it was done. Across the city, Karen Whitfield received the email. She opened it immediately. Her eyes moved quickly, then slowed. The structure was clear. The pattern undeniable. She forwarded it to a secure channel. Added a note. Client consistent. Evidence aligns. Back in the hospital room, Amelia placed the phone down. Her hand rested beside it. Still. Controlled. Lucas remained unaware. He believed the situation remained within his influence, that the narrative had not shifted, that the system would accept what it had been given. He did not know the direction had already changed. The next morning, discharge papers were completed, instructions given, medications listed, follow-up appointments scheduled. Amelia listened. She absorbed everything. Lucas signed where necessary, handled what he believed needed handling. They left the hospital in the early afternoon. The sky was clear, the air still, the parking lot unchanged. Amelia moved slowly, the child secured in the carrier, her arms supported, her steps measured. Lucas walked beside her, his presence aligned with expectation. From the outside, nothing appeared unusual. A couple, a newborn, a routine departure. But the structure that had once contained everything had already begun to open. Not visibly, not yet, but in ways that would not close again. As the car door shut and the engine started, Amelia looked forward. Not at Lucas, not at the past, at what came next. And this time she would not remain inside the version he had written. The house received them exactly as they had left it. The decorations were gone, but their absence felt deliberate rather than natural. Surfaces were clean, furniture aligned. Nothing suggested interruption. Nothing suggested that something irreversible had taken place within those walls. Lucas unlocked the door and stepped inside first. "Watch your step," he said, holding it open behind him. Amelia entered slowly, the child secured against her chest, her arm still supported by the rigid structure of the splint. The air inside the house felt controlled, unchanged, almost untouched by the events that had unfolded elsewhere. That, more than anything, made the difference visible. Lucas moved ahead, setting his keys down in their usual place. The sound was familiar, repetitive, a signal that the structure had resumed. "I'll get things set up," he said. Amelia nodded, though she did not need him to arrange anything. She had already calculated what was required, where she would sit, how she would move, what she could reach without assistance. She walked toward the living room, lowering herself carefully into the chair nearest the window. The child shifted slightly, then settled again, his breathing even. Lucas moved through the house, adjusting small details. A blanket repositioned, a bottle placed on the table. The television turned on briefly, then off again. Each movement carried intention, but also something else, an attempt to re-establish continuity. As if nothing had broken, as if nothing had changed. Amelia watched without comment. The silence between them was not new, but it had changed in function. It no longer protected the structure. It observed it. That evening passed without incident. Lucas spoke occasionally, offering practical updates, reminders, small instructions framed as concern. "Don't strain your arm. Let me handle the lifting. Try to rest." Amelia responded when necessary. Short answers. Accurate. Contained. The child remained the center of the room, not as a distraction, but as a constant. Every movement now adjusted around him. Every decision accounted for his presence. Lucas seemed to understand this, but he did not fully grasp what it displaced. Control had shifted. Not visibly, not completely, but enough. The next morning, the first call came. Lucas answered it in the kitchen, his voice low, his tone unchanged. "Yes," he said. "I received the notice." A pause. "No, that's not accurate." Another pause. "I'll respond accordingly." He ended the call without elaboration. Amelia did not ask. She did not need to. The notice had already reached him. Karen Whitfield had moved forward. The documents Amelia sent had not remained isolated. They had entered a system designed to examine, to compare, to question. Lucas stepped back into the living room. "That was just administrative," he said. Amelia looked at him. "What kind of administrative?" Lucas hesitated. "Routine," he replied. "Nothing significant." Amelia nodded. She did not challenge the word. routine. That was how things appeared before they changed. Later that afternoon, an email arrived. Lucas saw it first. His expression did not shift dramatically, but his stillness lasted longer than usual. Amelia noticed. "What is it?" she asked. Lucas placed the phone down slowly. "They're requesting documentation," he said. For what? Lucas looked at her. For the hospital incident. The phrasing was precise. Controlled. Amelia's gaze remained steady. "What kind of documentation?" Lucas exhaled slightly. "Medical records. Statements. Financial disclosures." The last word lingered. Amelia's eyes did not move. "Financial," she repeated. Lucas nodded. "Standard procedure." Amelia did not respond. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of alignment. Everything she had documented, everything she had recorded, everything she had preserved, was now being requested. Not by her, by the system. Lucas stood moving toward the kitchen again. "I'll handle it," he said. Amelia watched him go. He believed response equaled control. That providing information meant shaping it. That structure could be maintained through management. He did not yet understand that once multiple sources existed, consistency could no longer be controlled by one person. That evening, another message arrived. This one from Karen, direct, to Amelia. The subject line was simple: next steps. Amelia opened it. Inside, the language was precise. No urgency, no pressure, but clear. The case had been initiated. Preliminary review underway. Evidence received and logged. Further documentation required. Amelia read it once, then again. Her expression did not change, but her breathing shifted slightly. Not faster, more defined. She placed the phone down. Lucas entered the room. "Everything okay?" he asked. Amelia looked at him. "Yes." The word remained consistent, unchanged, but its meaning had evolved. The next day, the discrepancy appeared. It was small, at first. A date that did not align. A transaction that Lucas could not fully explain within the structure he had already presented. The request for clarification arrived quickly. He responded, adjusted, reframed. But the adjustment created another gap, another inconsistency. Each response required another. Each explanation opened a new question. Amelia observed. She did not intervene. She did not correct. She allowed the process to unfold. The documents she had provided remained unchanged, consistent, accurate. Lucas's responses began to shift, subtly, then more noticeably. His tone altered, his timing delayed, his language less precise. He was still controlled, still composed, but the pattern had begun to fracture. And once fractured, it did not return to its original form. By the end of the week, the request expanded. Additional records, extended timelines, third-party verification. The system had moved beyond initial review. It had begun to examine, closely. Lucas stood in the kitchen reading the latest message. His posture remained upright, but his stillness returned, longer this time. Amelia watched from the living room, the child resting beside her. The house remained quiet, ordered, intact. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, the structure had already shifted beyond repair. Lucas turned toward her. "They're overcomplicating this," he said. Amelia met his gaze. "They usually don't," she replied. The statement was simple, not confrontational, but final. Lucas did not respond. He returned his attention to the phone. The silence that followed was no longer shared. It was separate, defined. And for the first time, Lucas was no longer the one shaping it. The courtroom did not feel dramatic. There were no raised voices, no sudden revelations delivered with force. The space was structured for something else: measured examination, controlled language, the steady progression of fact over interpretation. Amelia arrived early. Karen Whitfield walked beside her, a folder held securely in one hand, her movements precise and unhurried. Amelia carried the child close, her arm still partially supported, though the splint had been replaced with a lighter brace. The healing had begun, not complete, but visible. Lucas arrived separately, His posture remained aligned, his expression composed. He wore a suit that fit well his appearance, consistent with the image he had always maintained. He greeted his attorney quietly, their exchange brief and contained. There was no direct interaction between them, not before the hearing began. Inside, the courtroom settled into its rhythm. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. The process began. Karen spoke first. Her voice carried clearly, without force, without embellishment. She outlined the sequence, not dramatically, chronologically. A pregnant woman, an injury, a hospital report, medical documentation, financial irregularities. Each point presented as part of a structure, not as isolated claims. Lucas's attorney responded in kind, measured, controlled. He emphasized context, accident, misinterpretation, stress. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The courtroom did not reward volume. It rewarded consistency. The first piece of evidence entered without resistance. The hospital report, Dr. Harlan's documentation, the fracture, the timing, the notes recorded at intake. Lucas watched as the document was reviewed. His expression did not change, but his attention sharpened. Karen continued. She introduced the financial records next. The bank statements, the transaction logs, the patterns Amelia had identified. Each document aligned with the timeline, each entry supported by dates that matched independent records. Lucas's attorney objected briefly, not to the existence of the documents, to their interpretation. The judge allowed them. Interpretation would be addressed through context. Karen did not argue. She moved forward. The email followed. Amelia's documentation. Clear, structured, without accusation, only sequence. The judge reviewed it carefully, then looked up. Was this prepared after the incident, he asked. Karen shook her head. No, Your Honor. The entries began prior. The distinction mattered. Lucas shifted slightly in his seat. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for Amelia to see. Karen paused, then introduced the recordings. She did not play all of them. Only selected portions. Enough to establish pattern. Lucas's voice filled the courtroom. Controlled. Measured. Familiar. You don't need to ask questions about things I've already handled. The recording ended. Silence followed. Not dramatic, but present. Lucas's attorney stood. Context is important, he said. Karen nodded. Of course, she replied. She did not argue the point. She allowed the pattern to remain. Unchallenged. The judge made a note, then looked toward Amelia. Would you like to make a statement, he asked. Amelia stood. Her movements were careful but steady. She did not look at Lucas. She looked at the judge. I documented what happened, she said. Her voice was even. I did not interpret it. She paused, then added, I provided everything I had, nothing more. She sat down. The statement did not attempt to persuade. It did not need to. Lucas's attorney called him next. Lucas stood. His posture remained controlled. He answered each question with precision. Yes. No. Clarification when required. He maintained his version. The fall. The accident. The misunderstanding. He did not contradict himself directly, but small gaps appeared. Dates that did not align perfectly. Explanations that required adjustment. Each adjustment noted, not challenged immediately, but recorded. Karen waited, then approached. Mr. Carter, she said, can you explain the transfer on March 6? Lucas nodded. A routine adjustment, he replied. Karen referenced the document. It occurred at 9:12 p.m., she said. Lucas paused. Then that would have been after work hours. Karen nodded. And earlier that day you indicated you were home at that time. Lucas hesitated. Approximately, he said. The word lingered. Karen did not press. She moved to the next point. March 11, she said. Another transfer. Larger amount. Lucas adjusted slightly. Also routine. Karen held up the corresponding note. That date aligns with a recorded absence from the home, she said. Lucas's expression remained composed. I had meetings, he replied. Karen nodded. She stepped back. No further questions. The pattern remained, unresolved, but visible. Ethan Brooks sat in the back of the courtroom. He had arrived without announcement, without introduction. His presence did not draw attention, but it carried weight. He did not speak. He did not move. He observed. Lucas did not notice him. Not at first. The hearing continued. The judge reviewed the evidence, the documents, the recordings, the statements. Each piece considered not in isolation, but in relation to the others. That was where the structure mattered. Consistency, alignment, pattern. Lucas's version did not collapse. It shifted, adjusted, but the adjustments created new inconsistencies. Amelia's remained unchanged. That difference carried weight. By the time the final statements were given, the atmosphere had settled into something definitive, not resolved, but directed. The judge spoke. His tone was measured. "The court recognizes the consistency of the documentation provided," he said. He paused. "Further review will be required." The words were not final, but they carried direction. Lucas's posture remained unchanged, but his stillness returned. Amelia sat quietly. Her hands rested in her lap, the child beside her. She did not react, not visibly. She did not need to. The process had moved forward, not through argument, through structure, through record, through what had been preserved without distortion. As the courtroom began to empty, Lucas turned slightly. And for the first time, he saw Ethan. Recognition did not come immediately, but when it did, it registered, not in expression, in stillness. Ethan did not acknowledge him. He simply stood, then turned, and walked out. The distance between them remained, but the presence had been established, and Lucas understood. Not everything in this process was within his reach. Not anymore. The ruling did not arrive with force. It came in writing first. Structured language, precise, formatting paragraphs that carried weight not through tone but through clarity. Each sentence placed carefully, each conclusion supported by what had already been established. Amelia read it at the dining table. The same table where documents had once been placed in neat alignment, where envelopes had been opened and returned without disruption. Now the paper in front of her carried something different. Not possibility. Outcome. The child rested nearby asleep, his breathing steady, his presence unchanged by what had been decided around him. Karen sat across from Amelia, her posture composed, her attention focused. "They've granted the protective order," she said. Amelia nodded once. Her eyes remained on the page. "The court is also requiring full financial disclosure," Karen continued. "And temporary custody remains with you." Amelia's hand rested lightly against the table. Still, controlled. No visible reaction. Karen did not fill the silence. She allowed Amelia to absorb the information without interruption. "The next steps will depend on compliance," she added after a moment. "But this is significant." Amelia looked up. Not at Karen. At the window beyond her. The light outside was clear, defined, unobstructed. "Yes," she said. The word was simple. It carried no emphasis, but it acknowledged what had shifted. Across town, Lucas sat in his attorney's office. The same document lay in front of him. He read it once, then again. His expression did not change dramatically, but the stillness returned. Longer this time. His attorney spoke, outlining options, explaining procedure, framing the outcome within legal context. Lucas listened. He nodded at appropriate moments, asked questions when necessary, maintained composure. But the structure he had relied on, the one he had believed could be managed, had been altered, not completely removed, but no longer his. "The financial disclosures will need to be thorough," his attorney said. Lucas's gaze remained on the page. "They will be," he replied. The statement was controlled, but it carried a weight he could not fully contain, because thoroughness required exposure, and exposure removed control. Back at the house, Amelia folded the document carefully. She did not rush. She did not set it aside. She placed it into a folder, aligned it with the others. The medical records, the financial logs, the printed emails, everything now part of the same structure, not separate, not fragmented, unified. Karen stood, I'll follow up once we receive their response, she said. Amelia nodded. Thank you. Karen paused briefly. You handled this correctly, she said. Amelia did not respond to the statement, not out of dismissal, but because it did not require acknowledgement. Karen left. The house returned to silence, but not the same silence as before. This one did not contain uncertainty. It held resolution, partial, but defined. Later that afternoon, Lucas returned. He entered the house as he always had. Keys placed in the same spot, shoes aligned, movements controlled. But something in his posture had shifted. Not visibly, but in the way he paused slightly longer before entering the room. Amelia sat in the same chair, the child beside her, the folder on the table. Lucas noticed it. What is that? He asked. Amelia looked at him. The ruling. Lucas stepped closer. His gaze moved to the folder, then back to her. They're overreaching, he said. Amelia did not respond immediately. Then quietly, they're responding. Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. This isn't final, he said. Amelia nodded. I know. The agreement did not align with his expectation. He paused, then moved toward the kitchen. I'll take care of it, he added. The phrase returned. Familiar, but diminished. Amelia watched him. Not with resistance, not with challenge, with clarity. The phrase no longer held weight, because the structure it depended on had already shifted. Over the next days, compliance began. Documents requested, documents submitted. Each one revealing more than the last. The financial records once contained within controlled explanations now existed in a broader context. Reviewed, compared, verified. Lucas responded. He adjusted. He reframed. But each response required alignment with existing data, and where alignment failed, it was noted. Not argued, not dramatized, simply recorded. Amelia did not intervene. She did not need to. The system moved forward on its own. That was its function, to examine, to compare, to conclude, without reliance on narrative, without need for persuasion. Ethan remained at a distance. He did not contact Lucas. He did not involve himself directly, but his presence existed within the process, quiet, structured, ensuring that nothing was overlooked. Amelia knew he was there, not because he said so, but because the gaps that might have been missed were not. That was enough. One evening, as the house settled into its new rhythm, Lucas stood in the doorway of the living room. You could have handled this differently, he said. Amelia looked at him. I did. Lucas exhaled slowly. You didn't have to involve them. Amelia's gaze remained steady. They were already involved. Lucas did not respond. He turned away. The conversation ended, not unresolved, complete. The child stirred slightly. Amelia adjusted the blanket. Her movements remained careful, measured, but no longer constrained by uncertainty. The house remained intact, the walls unchanged, the structure still standing, but its function had altered. It no longer contained silence, it held outcome. And Amelia did not stand in the center of it. She moved through it, with clarity, with intention, without the need to explain, because everything that mattered had already been seen. And once seen, it did not return to being hidden. The house did not change overnight. It remained where it had always been positioned, at the end of the quiet street, framed by trimmed grass and predictable routines. From the outside, nothing distinguished it from the others nearby. But Amelia no longer moved through it the same way. The difference was not visible in furniture or arrangement. It existed in intention. The mornings began earlier, now, not because they needed to, but because Amelia preferred the quiet before the day settled into its expected rhythm. The child woke with soft sounds, not cries, small movements, shifting breaths that required attention but not urgency. Amelia learned his patterns quickly. She adjusted to them, fed him, held him, moved with care, her arm still healing, her body still recovering, but her focus steady. Lucas remained in the house, but his presence no longer defined its structure. He moved through rooms with the same controlled precision, but something in his actions had changed. They no longer shaped the environment. They responded to it. The legal process continued, not visibly, not dramatically, but steadily. Documents submitted. Responses reviewed. Timelines extended. Each step moving forward without announcement. Amelia did not follow every detail. She did not need to. Karen updated her when necessary. Clear summaries. No excess. The system was doing what it was designed to do. And for the first time, Amelia allowed something to exist outside her control. Not because she had given up responsibility, but because responsibility no longer required her to carry everything alone. One afternoon, Karen called. "The disclosures are complete," she said. Amelia listened. "They've identified additional accounts," Karen continued. "Funds that weren't previously declared." Amelia closed her eyes briefly. Not in surprise, in confirmation. "I understand," she said. "There will be further proceedings," Karen added. "But the direction is clear." Amelia nodded, though Karen could not see her. "Thank you." The call ended. Amelia remained still for a moment. The child rested against her shoulder, his breathing, even his presence, unchanged by the information that had just been confirmed. Lucas entered the room shortly after. He paused when he saw her. "Was that her?" he asked. Amelia opened her eyes. "Yes." Lucas stepped closer. "What did she say?" Amelia looked at him. They found the accounts. Lucas's expression did not break, but it shifted, slightly. "That doesn't mean anything," he said. Amelia did not respond immediately. "Then, it means they're looking." Lucas exhaled slowly. "They've been looking," he replied. Amelia nodded. "Yes." The agreement was not alignment. It was acknowledgement. Lucas turned away. The conversation ended. Again, without escalation, without resolution, but complete. Days passed. Then weeks. The house remained the same. But Amelia began to prepare. Not visibly, not dramatically. She organized documents, reviewed schedules, confirmed arrangements. Everything aligned with the timeline she had already established. She did not rush. She did not delay. She moved when the structure allowed it. And eventually, it did. The final paperwork arrived in the afternoon, delivered without ceremony, placed into her hands by Karen, who stood in the doorway with the same composed presence she had maintained from the beginning. "It's finalized," she said. Amelia took the documents. Her fingers moved across the pages slowly, carefully, as if confirming not just the words, but the weight they carried. Custody, financial separation, legal distance, each term defined, each outcome structured. Amelia nodded once. "Okay," she said. Karen watched her for a moment. "You don't have to leave immediately," she said, "but you can." Amelia looked up. "I will," she replied. Karen did not ask when. She did not need to. She understood that the timing had already been decided. That evening, Amelia packed. Not everything, only what was necessary. Clothes, documents, items for the child. Each piece placed with care. Nothing rushed, nothing left unconsidered. Lucas watched from the doorway. "You're leaving," he said. Amelia continued packing. "Yes." Lucas stepped further into the room. "You don't have to do this now." Amelia did not look at him. "I do." Lucas's hands tightened slightly at his sides. "This isn't how it was supposed to end." Amelia paused, then turned. She looked at him directly. "It didn't end," she said. "It changed." Lucas did not respond. He held her gaze for a moment longer, then looked away. The silence that followed was different. Not shared. Not structured. Final. The next morning, Amelia carried the last bag to the door. The child rested against her shoulder. Her arm still bore the trace of what had happened. Not fully healed, but no longer broken. Lucas stood near the kitchen. He did not move to stop her. He did not speak. There was nothing left to adjust, nothing left to reframe. Amelia opened the door. The air outside was clear. Still, the same as it had always been. She stepped forward, not quickly, not dramatically, with intention. The door closed behind her, not loudly, but completely. She did not look back. She did not need to. The structure she had once lived within no longer defined her movement. It no longer contained her silence. It no longer shaped her decisions. The road ahead was not certain, not simple, but it was hers. And that was enough. Miles away, Ethan Brooks stood near a window, his phone in hand. A message appeared. Simple. 2 words. She's gone. Ethan read it once, then placed the phone down. He did not respond. He did not need to. The outcome had been reached. Not through force, not through intervention, through structure, through record, through truth that had been preserved long enough to be recognized. Back on the quiet street, Amelia walked toward the car. The child shifted slightly. She adjusted her hold. Her steps remained steady, measured. The house behind her remained unchanged, but it no longer held her. And as she placed the child into the car, securing him with careful hands, Amelia allowed herself one final moment of stillness. Not to reflect, not to revisit, but to acknowledge that she had left with everything that mattered. Not victory, not relief, something quieter, more enduring. Dignity. The story does not end with the closing of a door. It lingers in what remains afterward, the quiet spaces where decisions settle, where consequences unfold without noise, where truth continues to exist without needing to be repeated. Amelia did not raise her voice. She did not demand to be believed. She did not force recognition. She documented. She observed. She waited. And when the time came, she allowed the structure of truth to speak for her. There is something uncomfortable about that kind of strength. It does not satisfy the need for confrontation. It does not provide immediate resolution, but it endures. Because it is not built on reaction, it is built on consistency, on clarity, on the refusal to distort reality in order to survive it. Many things in life go unnoticed. Small corrections, quiet control, moments that do not appear significant until they align into something undeniable. This story was never about a single incident. It was about pattern. And the moment that pattern could no longer remain hidden. If this story stayed with you, if you recognized something in its silence, in its restraint, in the way truth unfolded without being forced, you can let that be enough. And if you choose to, you can leave a small trace of your presence here. A like, a comment telling where you are in the world and what time it is for you right now. A quiet decision to subscribe, not for the story that has ended, but for the ones that still need to be told.